What's up guys, it's Jorge here with another episode of See or No. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new Netflix movie, A Quiet Place 2. And when I say Quiet Place 2, I mean literally, it is the knockoff Netflix version of A Quiet Place.
Something's happening. We can't stay here. Dad. They're back.
Alright, so as you see from this trailer, this plot is very similar to A Quiet Place. It looks like we have another twin film situation on our hands where two films that have the same plot are produced and released within the same time frame. Think movies like No Strings Attached and Friends with Benefits. Two movies that came out the same year that feature the same plot about attractive people wanting to bang each other. This situation is kind of different. A Quiet Place was released last year in theaters but was inspired by a book that was written in 2015. Now Netflix is making a movie that can be considered a Quiet Place ripoff, but it's actually an official adaptation of the novel, which A Quiet Place and the makers of A Quiet Place, they never claimed. Netflix is like, hey, if John Krasinski don't want to claim it, we sure as shit will. Which now makes me question, is A Quiet Place a ripoff of The Silence, or is The Silence a ripoff of The Quiet Place? The Silence stars Kiernan Shipka and Stanley Tucci as father and daughter trying to survive this post-apocalyptic world. The acting is good in it, but I wouldn't say there was something that drew me to the characters emotionally like the characters in A Quiet Place. There were a few scenes with Stanley Tucci where I felt like he was kind of mailing it in. There's this one scene especially where his dying brother is in a car about to get eaten by these monsters, and there's just like no emotion from Stanley Tucci whatsoever. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of my brother, but if he was about to die, I'd at least like shed a tear or something. Kiernan Shipka does a great job in this. She does a fine job in the role that she was given, but she is playing a deaf woman, and in movies like these where there's underrepresented groups that are played on screen, I really wish they would have gotten a deaf person to play Kiernan Shipka's character, because even though Kiernan Shipka is a great actress, she can't relate to the deaf experience like a deaf person can. There's just like no way. I like the cinematography in this movie. It looks like a big budget movie. It looks like something that would play in theaters, not on Netflix, so that has something going for it. Big shout out to the director John Leonetti in this movie. He's usually known for his work as a cinematographer, but he gets to direct this one. Does a great job with the directing, even though I was not a big fan of the pacing. The Silence starts off at the beginning of this epidemic. It gives you the whole backstory of these monsters, the who, the what, the when, the where. Everything is pretty much explained. I really didn't think the backstory was that necessary, and they spend like way too much time setting up the plot. By the time this movie goes into the second and third act of the movie, it was hard to just stay awake. This movie is going to be compared a lot to A Quiet Place. That's just inevitable. But I would say the biggest difference between The Silence and A Quiet Place are the villains. A Quiet Place pretty much just focuses on the family of four trying to survive these monsters that only hunt by sound. The Silence is a lot like The Walking Dead in the fact that not only does this family have to survive these monsters, but they gotta survive these batshit crazy humans that honestly and ironically do more damage than these monsters ever could. The baddies in this movie, they're pretty creepy. They're like these cult-like figures that want Allie for her heightened senses. Even though they're creepy and they do a good job with what they're given, I felt by the time they show up in the third act, I've already lost interest. I really wish they would have been introduced sooner. I probably would have liked this movie much more. Okay, so all in all, even though I felt like I was watching a remake of A Quiet Place at times, I do think this movie, it has enough originality for me to think that it stands up on its own. I look at this movie as more of a companion piece to A Quiet Place. In my opinion, they might as well just take place in the same universe. I actually think some people will prefer the Netflix version of The Silence than the theatrical version of A Quiet Place. So I'm not going to be picky. I'm going to give this movie a C, especially for Netflix standards. Is it better than A Quiet Place? Definitely not, but it is definitely worth checking out on a random board Tuesday night.
Adios, amigos.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching my review of The Silence. What did you think about The Silence? Let me know in the comments below. This is going to be a very, very divisive film, so I'm very curious on what you guys think. And with that said, if you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. There's many more things coming down the pipeline.